Welcome, everyone, this evening. Wanted to start off by looking through the lens of love to our favorite night of the week where we come back for Awaken Your Inner Genius. Here we are with our panel. We have Jim and Karen and Ken tonight, and we have a fantastic discussion around Unit 8, Lesson 31. But those of you who've been with us many weeks, you know how the drill goes. Right quick, before I get into some of the details, we're going to pause for just a moment and tune in to that universal heartbeat. So wherever you are, you'll pause for just a moment. You can either open your eyes or close your eyes, whatever is important for you. Tune into that beautiful universal heartbeat. And remember that the desire of mind is the motivate force which energizes all creation through the universal heartbeat. Keep bringing up that phrase, universal heartbeat, each week. Get settled here in your body, grounded wherever you are. Inviting in the light, the love, and the wisdom that will come forward through our time here today. And may we remember that love is the greatest universal force in the world. Get centered here in your body and take another deep breath in and out. And may we join in together we come forward here on January 26th. So I am not sure about the rest of you. You'll begin to come back to us here. I'm not sure about the rest of you, but does anybody else find it difficult that we're already here to the end of January 2025? Crazy.
Going fast.
It is going fast. And so I couldn't help but just chuckle when I saw these on my desk and thinking through about how powerful it is, because really the essence of much of what we're talking about is looking through that universal lens of love. I do want to bring up right quick where we are in the home study course. We are here and we're finishing up Unit 8 tonight. So we are going to go into that balance of thought and action. There's a look at the unit. We are not doing the answers to student questions here for this month because we had a previous session that we skipped 1 week, but we are diving into Unit 9 next week. And boy, I can't wait to show you what's in store for that. But just want to remind everybody, if I could ask Jim, please remind everybody of the favorite quote that actually inspired this entire broadcast.
Mediocrity is self-inflicted and genius is self-bestowed.
Love that quote from Walter Russell here, and welcome everyone that's listening on TikTok, on Facebook, on wherever our social media is that we're bringing you in here. We are thrilled to have you. And please just to remind you that, Ken, if you could, my love, please read that particular note.
If you can, no, I'm just kidding. Read and count to 9, you can master the secrets of the universe. Oh yeah, prove it.
All right, so that is where we are, and what this broadcast is about. While there's so much work that you can you can learn all about Walter and Lara Russell at philosophy.org. What this group of students came together was to focus on the home study course, and so that's what we have been doing now for the past several months. We've been at this actually, including our practice, for over a year. Hello, Karen. Hello, Rita, Linda, and Bonnie. So good to see you all. And what we had hoped to do was follow what Walter and Leo's methodology was of 1 unit per month, 1 lesson per week. And so we are going to dive into this particular lesson. And so I want to ask the panel before we officially begin, what was, just to give me a quick snapshot, what stood out to you? What stood out to you from this particular lesson, Karen?
You know what to me is, it was always about balance, but it's actually harkens back to the other ones. When you really think of it in a broader scope, it's inviting us to create a greater civilization. To really, when we talk about the quote about mediocrity, it was about, it's not that we're mediocre as people, but we need the knowledge and to invest in learning and to invest in becoming the best version of yourself.
I love it. Jim?
I like in this lesson that they really are very clear on the difference between man's thinking and divine thinking. And they make it very clear that it's yours for the taking if you understand that basic principle. That you're not in, it's impossible to not be divine. You are a divine spark manifesting. You are. But it is possible to choose not to walk toward that, but walk away from it for bodily things. And that's the history of humanity.
Okay. And my love, Ken?
I like that it makes us all accountable for our lives. It shows how we are the creators of everything that's ever gone on in our lives, whether it's balanced or imbalanced, where it comes from, where the imbalance lies, and where the balance lies, back with that relationship with God that we all need to have. That's what this is about. We read, we pray, we meditate. And as we walk through the day, ideally, we're staying connected to that centering focal point of God centering us, that undivided half, the equator, as it points out in one of the diagrams, the equator that we all go to, the pineal gland, which we reference as the golden ratio, and the all-seeing eye, which again, that's one organ that, so there's no duality to, is the only organ that is singular, which is the pineal gland. So there's something probably important. Walter Russell talks actually in a lot of the readings about how he would spend many moments and much time just focusing on the centering, that equator within himself, and find a lot of peace, solitude, answers in that realm, that he would actually look forward to that. So I think that's really, it's like going to motivate me, not to just that I have to be with God, which I think a lot of times philosophies do. It's like, I want to be with God because God is the balancer for everything that goes on in my life. And any imbalance is because I'm either staying on the left side or I'm staying on the right side of life, one or the other. I'm not getting back to center, as Jim likes to talk about.
Very powerful.
Of carbon.
Part of what made me chuckle is, the Walter and Larry Russell, they were hoping that students would end up going through the home study course every year. So you would go through the whole 12 months and then you would start again the following. And so this is now my third time through the home study course. And I chuckled because as I picked out the quotes from this one, as we prepared the materials, I came early today here to the Russell Museum in Waynesboro, Virginia. I was walking around the museum, and I literally ran across the quotes that I'd pulled together for a previous Russell experience, and I'd pulled out the same quotes. So I had to chuckle. This one will be brought up later. It says, "What you are and what you create depends upon what you know." And I had to chuckle because I was like, wow, third time in, same quote I pulled from the very first year to this third year. So it must have been incredibly meaningful to me. So very interesting as we go through it. And I want to encourage anyone who is going through this with us, is that it's literally like peeling back layers and layers. It's so beautiful. So why don't we go ahead and dive in? We are here on page 611, and we're the title, if you would love, please just start us off with the first paragraph and bringing up those first few sentences.
Surely, balance in thought and action, as it is our sole purpose and occupation in life to create divided and balanced thought bodies in order to have good experiences and happy lives. We will take another simple step in the unfolding of God's plan and explain fully how God seemingly divides the unconditioned universal equilibrium into pairs of opposite conditions in order to create the wave of motion from which thought bodies are constructed. We will give many simple examples of familiar effects so that you will recognize the fact that you produce thought bodies in exactly the same way that God produces them. The only difference is important between the only difference being that God keeps his creating body in balance and we lose ours all the time. That was enough there. That was, I guess.
Man rarely does. Yes. So, and as I wanted to go into this next paragraph with everyone, and ask for comments from the panel here. I'd like us to go all the way down to the black brackets before we open it up. It says, to the extent that you know your universe and your power in it. So drink in those words, everyone. Hello, D. You will build a balanced life of happiness and masterly achievement because you will be working knowingly with God. When you do fully comprehend and practice the law of balance. So if everyone would please type in the chat box right now, the law of balance. Notice how balance is capitalized. No matter what happens to your own little universe, you will know what to do with it. So I thought that was incredibly powerful. Jim, if you would read just that next line, rhythmic balance interchange.
Sure. Rhythmic balanced interchange between every pair of opposite conditions in this divided thought wave universe is the inviolate law, which must be obeyed by man and by nature.
All right, and Karen, if you'll read the next two sentences, please, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
Nature persistently violates it, and nature insistently pays the price for its violation in its storms, tornadoes, crashing avalanches, and tragedy of stellar cataclysms. Man persistently violates it and pays the price of his violation in his crash of business, failures, entities, unhappiness, and illness.
All right, and so it goes on to talk about all the tornadoes of the earth cannot affect the balance of the earth, for the balance of the universe cannot be upset. So I'm going to read one more sentence, and I want to just pause for a moment. If you disobey that law, it will affect your balance in respect to yourself, but not to the universe. For God balances every unbalanced action of yours with an equal and opposite reaction until you do balance. So let's go back to the panel right quick and just pause for a moment. What do you want to say about this for anyone who is listening in here this evening? Jim?
Well, as you go through life, we are constantly faced with multiple choices and decision every day, every hour, every year of our lives. And we will tend to choose that which is most convenient rather than necessarily that which is in our best interest. And as a result, we are out of balance with universal balance, and that which we chose will be reflected back to us. This is what astounds me about this time in man's history. There's no better time right now to be on planet for those that choose to evolve and for those that are not waking up, because the reaction to their action will be much swifter now. And what you do will come home to you much faster now. So that's why I say to myself and people, don't worry about what's going on in the world. The unawakened are trying to continue to control things, but they will not be able to offset the reaction to their actions that will be coming back at them at light speed now. And we will evolve, and they will have made their choice and suffer that reaction.
Jim, why are you saying that? Is that something with your astrological perspective, or where is that coming from?
No, it's their thought patterns.
Okay.
Their thought patterns are to control, even if it's at the cost of others. What they don't understand, if they seek to control things and it is at the cost of others, that cost will come right back to them. The
Okay.
destruction that they create will fall upon them. The negativity that they foster through lies and manipulation will fall back on them. It will no longer be kept away from them, as they've managed to void it for centuries. It's coming home, and it's going to come home hard and fast. And this generation will witness that.
Okay.
And
Yes.
so,
Well, what was interesting to me is it was talking about if you disobey that law, it will affect your balance in respect to yourself, but not the universe, because God balances every unbalanced action. So I hear so many people will say, well, why did God do that? Or God must have done this, or they end up putting it on something else, when in fact it is us and our actions and our choices or not choices who end up setting things into motion that we didn't even recognize we were out of balance. I don't think most of us get up each day and say, I am going to live an unbalanced day.
no.
Now, most of us don't wake up and say, I'm going to live a balanced day either, but I'm just curious. Ken?
I disagree on that. Most of us don't wake up and say, I'm going to live a balanced day. I think we all wake up hoping today is the day, right? Today is the day where everything.
Can you come closer? We can't hear you.
Can you hear me or no?
Yeah,
Just
that's
come-
Okay. And in terms of that, I do agree. We don't wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to do as much as I can to destroy my life today. I think we wake up with the attitude of, I hope today's the day. I hope today's the day where things get better. I hope today's the day where the solutions present themselves to some of these issues I'm having in my life. I hope today is the day that something good comes into my world and enters into my world. I think all of us wake up with that approach. The question is, how long does that kind of energy last? How long what we're learning here in these writings is it's not about energy. It's not about something like, it's about desiring. And desiring what? To stay in balance. And what does that mean in this world that we're living in? We're talking about a thought wave universe. So 70,000 thoughts a day, which is what the average human being has. How many of those thoughts are balanced, and how do you keep up with them all? And that's why there's such a deep need for relationship with God. Why I need to stay in that relationship and communion. God, can you be with me now? Can you guide me on this podcast? Can you help me to hear the things that you would want me to hear? To read the things you'd want me to read, to the things that would come out at me right now that are more pertinent to my life. Can you help me see those things and connect to those things on a deeper level? I make those petitions, and some people call it mindfulness, but to me, it's called a living relationship. God is not a praying relationship that I say in the morning, I say at night. It's a living relationship that I have all throughout the day, which is what this course is riddled with, of how we work with God instead of against God. And that's what this particular lesson is, quite frankly, about, helping us understand how, when we're working against God, when we are out of balance, either with our left thinking or right thinking. That can be with aggressive thinking, fault finding with people, looking for failings, seeing what's wrong as opposed to what's right. In God's universe, if all is good, the sole purpose of the human will is to seek God's will. That's the best way that I can say it, that I've learned. The sole purpose of my will is to seek my Creator's will in oneness with me.
And I would add to that. So a couple of things. I'm going to ask our team. We have James and Joey in the background, if they will drop the link in the chat box of the beautiful video that Karen made of Ken's voice doing the salutation of the day. So the salutation of the day was a way to help people become balanced. And so, Ken, I know that you try to say that every single day. And that's an attempt to stay in that rhythmic, balanced interchange. Dee says this: yes, to remain aware of the thoughts, the energy that we are radiating. So absolutely. But when you look back for a moment before we continue on to the next page, I would think that any of us, when we look back at our lives, we don't have to leave this incarnation to have lived past lives per se, because I look back to my 25-year-old self, my 35-year-old self, and I would have told you that I was doing as much as I could and that I had a strong relationship with God, but I was at a certain level of consciousness that I didn't quite understand. It was a distorted relationship in some respects. So I find this fascinating, the work in this particular unit fascinating, because as it says here on the top of page 613, it says now right above there in the bottom of page 612, it says, all men will come to me in due time, but theirs is the agony of waiting. And it says the agony is the price you will be paying for your own disobedience to that law. And that disobedience may not be willful, but due entirely to ignorance of the way God builds divided thought bodies. So can you all please place that in the chat box, divided thought bodies, because that's a phrase that's unique to the Russell work, from what I understand, Jim. This idea of divided thought bodies is what the Russells talked about specifically. And they went on to quote something from the Divine Iliad. And I thought this was powerful for us to actually read. I've got it in a blue bracket there. And Jim, if you'll read that first paragraph, please.
From I or from when?
You can start with when and go to that next sentence.
Right. When man knoweth me in him, then am I he. And again, we quote, I, the one, am not divided into two as pairs of opposites of me. I divide the two extensions of my thinking, but I am not my thinking, nor am I two. When man...
Ken? Go ahead. Ken, can you read the next one?
Sure. When man thinketh man alone, denying me in him, then in man's image, man's not mine, and man's for the pattern of my balanced rhythmic images within man may not be seen in him, nor may the glory of my light be seen in him or known by him. When man thinketh me through knowing me, then he has patterned my image, and I am he. When man thinketh me in him, then is man's balance absolute. When man so thinketh that he hath all power, that I thy father, mother of all creation have. Then hath
so that comes from the Divine Iliad, that was written by Walter Russell during his illumination in 1921. And so you can find that particular book at philosophy.org. But what I found with that, so I want to mention the very last sentence. It says, I, thy father, mother of all creation. So do remember that that they
Father,
do a
mother.
nice job. Pardon?
Father, mother. Father, mother.
Father, mother.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
did
think
I
it's so
reverse?
important. No, I think it's a great distinction about realizing that that's what makes God undivided, is God is both father and mother. And that to me is a new concept, even with the modern age of all things that are moving the way they are. The father mother concept is, I think, beautiful. And I think it's something that needs to be exemplified a little more of like how do I live in that? And so how do we understand that? Go ahead.
Well, so this next paragraph, I found this very intriguing because it says knowledge of your universe must be scientifically based. And so, what they do in that particular paragraph, I won't read the whole thing, but it talks about that mankind is ever walking a tightrope, okay, when it's easy to lose balance. So, I want you to think if we were all walking on the proverbial balance beam, how many of us would be very good at walking on that beam right now? Whether some of us have hip issues, some of us have knee issues, feet issues, but how good are you at walking on the proverbial balance beam? Okay. But the trouble with life is that all of us are continually losing our balance in hundreds of little things. See where I circled that, which almost pass unnoticed, but it is their sum total which gauges both our safety and our progress. Hundreds of little things. Jim, I was curious if you could comment on that.
Well, the greatest among them for me is thought, our thoughts and actions. As we go about our day, everything appears to us as a thought or a concept before we act on it or as we act on it. So when we can train ourselves to keep our thoughts, as Ken pointed out, on our divine presence within us, you are far likely to tip to the left or the right and fall off of that beam. And actually, as you evolve, you'll come to find that it's easier to walk the beam than it is to fall to the left or the right. Yeah, it really is.
Beautifully said. Beautiful. Well said.
So wouldn't that be fascinating for somebody who's never walked a beam? So go get yourself a piece of masking tape, put it down the middle of your living room and go walk on it and practice, practice what it's like to actually stay there on the center and what does it take to be centered? Because if we were really to take this, part of why we watch when we're so enthralled with gymnasts who do this is they actually are very good. They have a strong core. They're very good at their breath work and they know how to have that balance. So wouldn't it be fascinating if for ourselves personally, I know I'm totally going to see Bonnie and Rita putting a masking tape down their living room when no one's in the house, walk that balance and think about living exactly what Jim just said.
But not when you're alone. Not when you're alone in case you fall.
I want to add one thing to that, right? Walking a beam is a physical act. Now we're talking about your thoughts, feelings, and actions. 70,000 thoughts a day. How many can you track in the last hour? That's why we need God. See, with God, I track them by the way that's what God gave us, the register of feelings. My feelings help me to know what I've been thinking about. So if you wake up in the morning, you don't feel good, you know you didn't go to bed thinking about good stuff. If you don't feel good right now, you know the correction for that feeling. Now we're talking about internal, not external, as we were talking about the balance beam. And it's a great example. It's a great illustration. But remember, we're also talking about the inner workings of a man and woman and how to balance that and to have more familiarity with that world of God's world, what we call God. How does God become my best friend? How does God become my soulmate? How do I see myself as one with God? Well, that's what practice is about. It comes from a relationship. And that relationship, as we talked about in the prior lesson, can be the way that the flower speaks to you, the tree speaks to you, the wind speaks to you, the sunset speaks to you, the ocean that you just saw in the opening meditation speaks to you. It speaks a language. And that language is not man's language, it's universal language.
And you also want to keep in mind that as these thoughts invade your brain in the processing, you don't attach to them. And that's the difference. When you attach to a thought or an action that takes you off center, then you're giving it a thought body. You're literally creating a body for that thought. And it is a frequency. And when a frequency is touched or ticked, it wants to continue to vibrate. So it'll keep coming back, going around and coming back. So the way to not give thought bodies to these as they come to you is do not attach to them. And just go about your knowing your divine center. go back and hold on to that and move through the day. It's also how you move through life, because we're constantly challenged by taking the easy road, or someone wants to convince us that if we do that, it'll benefit us better than that, and learning not to do that.
Well, and I would say that it's not just the easy road, Jim. So everybody I talk to right now is feeling the changing energies in the universe. Okay, there's a great deal of change underfoot. The energy is very intense, and so we actually can create our own storm if we don't keep our thoughts in balance.
Yes.
For me, I have to when that storm is percolating, okay, in my own life, I have to go outside and tune back into the in breath and the out breath, the universal heartbeat, to bring myself back to center. Because if not, then I can create my own little vortex right there in my living room.
And then there's the hidden ones that we hold on to, resentments, angers that we think we've done away with, and we haven't. If that thought or that person or that individual or the act that took place is within you, silently radiating rage or hatred or resentment, it is eating you alive. And that's when you want to learn to let all of this go. And that's exactly what the great masters, including Christ, meant when he said, you forgive endlessly.
Okay.
What is forgiveness? It's not attaching to what did or did not happen to you. Let it go.
So at 70,000 thoughts a day, how do we not attach to those thoughts? Is the one thing that I have learned is a thought is just a thought until I give it energy. So what Jim was saying is absolutely spot on. Attaching to it in layman's terms means to give feeling to it. See, feelings are energy. Feelings are power. The more I give feeling to an angry thought, the more power it has over me. The less feeling I give to it, like Jim is saying, to attach to it means to give it feelings. Stop giving feelings, which is your power, your energy,
That is true.
to things that are not serving you of the highest good. That person screwed me over. My brother or sister have not been really good to me. Those are, and when I keep pondering that, I start to realize it's accumulating energy, which means feeling. Starts to have momentum over me. Now I have no will to resist its demands. Remember, a thought is just a thought until you give it energy. Same with creating as it is decreating. Yes.
And as the Russells point out, the more you hold on to a thought or a resentment, the more it becomes empowered over you, and it eventually will force you to act upon it. It will overpower you and overwhelm you. And this is what you hear when people say, I just couldn't stop myself. You know,
They get too much feeling.
But if you let that grow strong enough, if you let that thought go strong enough, it will drag you down.
It will. So Karen has a thought, and then I want to pull up Deborah's comment. Karen?
There was something we didn't discuss in the last chapter that I think is relative to this one. And it talks about the conscious and the unconscious, where we think there's, and when Walter Russell said there is no unconscious. Basically, and that's in the video that we're playing tonight, is when we leave our body, we just, like, I think that you sparked me, Jim, because you talked about that with vibrating strings. And when we lay down, those strings get quiet. And then we can actually listen. So I actually love the idea of there's no such thing as being unconscious. It's just you're asleep. So you're actually can hear better.
Yeah.
So I wanted to mention that last time.
Your physical body is no longer registering motion.
Yeah.
It is, the battery is too discharged for it to do that. And as you sleep and you breathe, you recharge that battery until it gets back to the point where you can step back into the body and be active again. So it's very, very scientific, and it's also very simple, and it's so easy. It sounds so difficult, life, but just forgive and don't attach.
Well, don't attach. So I would say it's even a step beyond forgive. But let's pull out Deborah's comment. Deborah says this. Karen, if you could please read what Deborah had to say here.
That one. Okay. Knowing who we are and standing in the place with every thought, word, and action is the key to remembering who we are. We are one with the Mother, Father, God. Absolutely.
Yes. All right. Rita has a comment. Jim, if you would read hers.
I remember reading somewhere, just because you have a thought, it doesn't mean you have to believe it. That's true.
So much wisdom with that one, Rita.
Yeah.
In fact, I think
There you
That's a
go,
great
Rita.
picture.
A thought is just a thought till you give it energy. That's
No,
how it
actually,
goes.
I things come into my brain and I go, that's not mine. I take like my mind an eraser.
Yeah.
Something else in the airwaves came through and it's like, I ain't owning that one.
Yes.
And
Well,
Deb
when
told
you, Karen's making a great point. When you know balance and you find some balance, it's not hard to find. Just be at peace, right? Balance is harmonious thinking as opposed to distorted, angry thinking. But when you know balance and you come out of balance, it's like a scratch in a record, like, uh-oh. And a thought will do that, right? Oh, I can't believe those people drive that way. I'm coming out of balance. Hey, you know what? Let me open up for them. Let them in. If they don't signal, that's okay. I'll let them in because maybe I'll miss the signal one of these times and someone will let me in. It always comes around. I also know that if it's like try to fix slowing you down, then maybe there's an accident up ahead that God's saving me from. I'm always looking for the glass to be half full. That truly is God's realm. As one of the lessons we did last week that we were talking about was that take all things as good. There is no bad in the universe. Even, man, and I have had some physical struggles the last few years. So trust me, trying to find it all as good it's a building process. It isn't just happen overnight. First, I got to recognize that I took on some of it as being real, and then the healing starts. And the all is good is about the recovering, about recovering and know how to recover from it, know how to build back out of that physical ailment, that mental ailment, or that spiritual ailment that we may be going through. We can always start right now. God can only be found in the now. You will never find God 5 minutes ago or 5 minutes from now, but you can find God and be with God right now. And that to me was just such a simple key. And what it says in the salutation of the day is that I have a power to build the day or rend the day. So that's in my thought life. That's in my feeling life. And as Jim said, oh, I just did something. Why did you just do that? Thought, feeling, action. So when I take a wrong action, I know I've allowed negative thoughts. I've given feeling, energy to too many negative thoughts. And now the action I'm taking, I don't even know why I'm taking it other than to backtrack the feelings and the thoughts that came before the action, which will then be the process of discovering why I just did.
One second, Kim. Two quick things here. For me, I'm not telling other people what to do. I've never been a big fan of the image of the glass half empty, the glass half full. In my life and in my world, my glass is constantly overflowing with God's abundance. There's no half.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful, Jim. I'm really proud of you, man. That's good
Love it.
stuff.
And the other
Keep
thing
that
is,
up.
I forget what the other thing was, so it couldn't have been important.
Probably
Well,
the half empty part. Probably got the half empty part.
So before we take our first break, I want to pull up Deb Tonkin's quote, and this is what she said. This is why this teaching is a living philosophy. This is
Yes,
why this
beautiful.
teaching is a living
It's
philosophy, and
alive.
that's why we keep circling back to living.
Mhm.
So it is time, everyone, for our first 3-minute break. Be sure to stand up, get some oxygen, tune into that universal heartbeat, and we will love seeing you in 3 minutes. It is amazing how fast 3 minutes goes by, that everyone tells us they really, really appreciate. Says I really appreciate. So when we're talking about balance, the reason I was using the glasses tonight was because I travel a lot. I head to New York City on Tuesday. I'll be there Tuesday and Wednesday. And when I travel, I have my proverbial lens on because I have to work really hard to stay in balance. I always joked with my family that if ever I were to get arrested, it would likely be in an airport because I had a fight with a TSA agent, right? So doing whatever we can. So literally, I almost see myself wearing these glasses as I go through the airports and go through the cities. Deb Tonkin brings up something. Oh, Deb, our heart is with you. My goodness. If you'll take a look at this comment right here, Deb says this: after working on developing my website, and remember, she does the children's book series based on the Russell work. There was a major learning curve. I accidentally deleted the entire thing. I had to find my center, balance again, and start again, and it turned out better than before. Whew, we've all been there in those kind of comments. My goodness. Karen, you're on mute. If you'll come off mute.
I've done that. And you know what? You always you have to take a breath.
Go back.
Always
Go back to center. So let's go on down to the bottom of 614. And Ken, if we could start there at the bottom of that second paragraph in the bottom, where it starts with saying that go ahead and just start with says you make your bodies because you desire to create them, and take us there through the end of the page. Scroll down, James, if you would. And it's below. Keep going a little. Scroll up. I'm sorry. Scroll up where it says you make bodies. Okay, there it is. You make bodies because you desire to create them.
Okay, you make bodies because you desire to create them. You make them out of light and motion directed by the desire of your will. You pattern them in your own image. The life you give them is your life, as their bodies are also your body. They are extensions of your body, as your body is an extension of God's body. You made your own body by your desire to extend it from God's body. God made your body with you by the universal desire to manifest the man idea as part of God's one whole idea of creation. God could not create your body with you without your desire to do so. Desire of mind is the motivated force which energizes all creation. Which I think is a great one to end on. Desire of mind. And that is the key. That is such a key in life, is to recognize desire of my mind is the motivating force. It controls gravity. Matter of fact, what we bring into our lives, whether it's negative thoughts or positive thoughts, is relegated by the desire of our mind. So if the desire of your mind is towards projecting negativity, and think about it, a guy like Don Rickles, Robin Williams, comedians have this big issue in life where they've trained their minds to see all the negative things. And so they've taken the desire force of mind to see negativity and find failings. They have a hard time shutting that mechanism off after many years. And Robin Williams has a sad story. And, Don Rickles was not the happiest guy at the end of his life. And that's the byproduct of that. So desire of mind means that I bring everything I bring into my life, whether I knew it or know it or not, I desired it in. Whether I did it from a negative place or a positive place. So if there's positive things happening in my life, then I know that my desires have been like-minded and like God like-minded. And if there are negative things in my life, then I know that my physical sense self is taken over trying to satisfy something that can't be satisfied.
Well, there's some important things I thought in this section that I wanted to have a slow down for a moment, because it says you make them out of light. You make them out of light. So let's just pause right there. That is a huge statement. So can we all just anchor right there for a moment? You make them out of light and motion by the desire of your will. And so as you read through that paragraph, for me, that was a very difficult part for me to actually come to terms with the fact I made this body. So I mentioned to you that I've been at war of this body for my whole life. And so I wasn't happy with the hearing impairment. I wasn't happy with being short. And I know I'm not the only one who's had struggles with that. But when I had somebody in my life that was gifted in a divine way and actually had me start realizing what a gift the hearing impairment was, what a gift the shortness was, what a gift some of these things were. Perhaps this paragraph can serve as an invitation for anybody that's tuning in tonight, that if there is something that you created from light, that perhaps we dive into what the gift is for that. Does this resonate with the panel?
Yeah, Kim, when we get a moment, could you pull the image up that I had James
James?
download for it right there? Okay, this is. I'm asking the people to take this off the site, read it, and meditate on it, because this is creation, start to finish. The planes that you see at either side are the flat planes where all idea exists, that the Russells constantly tell us it all exists at plane with divinity, with God. That's you. The oblated sphere you see stepping in, the first plane is the zero, is the one plane, and then you see the oblated sphere, that's the two. Then you see a more rounded sphere, and then that's the three, and then the fourth, the 4++ is the perfect sphere. That's the perfect manifestation of divinity. That's what we're all seeking to do with our bodies. Most of us come through life and our thoughts and actions are recorded in the less spherical spheres, the oblated ones. Most of our thoughts and actions are recorded, voided, and repeated there. That's what karmic return is. Only when you reach perfect sphere in body and thought do you become I and the Father are one. So this is the 0 through 9 that we keep talking about. There's 4.5 steps in, there's 4.5 steps out. That's, if you can count the 0 to 9, you can master the secrets of the universe. So by taking a simple page like this, and before and after your meditations, do a quick read of it. Set the thought in your mind that this is what you're doing with every body that you are building and every body that you see being built by nature. This is all that's taking place. 4.5 steps in, 4.5 steps out, 4.5 and 4.5 is 9.
All right, so I want to add to that, Jim, because I love the way he brought this back in from the Universal One. James, if you will pull up slide 33, because I also want to bring this up. So it's the same kind of image, okay? Yes. But if you look here, all right, this was in Unit 4. This is the flashback to Unit 4, is exactly what Jim is talking about. And again, if you look at the next slide, 34, exactly what Jim is talking about. I'm simply making connections for us. And again, on page 35, this comes from Unit 4. You'll see the same space, shape, and point over and over and over again. Ken?
Yeah. What do you want me to comment on, love?
All of it.
On the shapes, well, 4.5 in, 4.5 out is probably going to be a little complex for most. So let's try and simplify it a little bit. And what Jim is, I think, trying to point out is that these stages are stages you can recognize in every situation, right? So let's say you have a problem, you can go. It's about 4 stages to get back to cause, and it's about 4 stages to go forward to get to solution. And that's the process of which we contemplate, right? I got to contemplate what was my action, what were my feelings, and what were my thoughts, and getting that back to that equilibrium of God to balance out and tell me where I might have gone wrong, where I may be going right. It works both ways. If you like what you're getting, keep doing what you're doing. What you heard tonight and what was read is you can think with no more than you know, and you know no more than what you're thinking with. It sounds a little bit like weird, but it's not. If you step back and think about it. No, I'm just kidding. Right? So if we don't add new knowledge in, this is new knowledge. Well, I got to see if I can get this on there. I got my home study course right here. So that's new knowledge right here, right? This is new knowledge. Yeah, James, where's my center screen? Dang it. Anyway, here's my, that was a joke. So here's knowledge. Now, if I don't absorb that new knowledge, and I don't read things that enhance new knowledge, then I'm going to just think with the same patterns I've been thinking with my whole life. And if you like where you're at, then the patterns might be really good. But if you're not liking where you're at, to change the pattern of your thinking, then you're going to have to change it with new knowledge. You're not going to just change it because, I want to think differently. I wish it were that easy. If it were that easy, I'd have done that a long time ago. I got to live it. That's what we're talking about. It's a living philosophy. But at each moment, I do live it. Remember, it was so important for me to remember. God is never going to ask more of me than I'm capable of giving or doing. And God knows exactly where I'm at. So what that means is give what you got. Give 100% of what you got. And I guarantee you the results will come. If you give any less than that, then you're going to get less than good results. 100% just means to do my best. Don't leave anything left in the basket. You know, dump it all out, whatever it is and whatever you're doing. Give it your all. No matter whether you're mowing the lawn or you're building a whole new empire, it doesn't really matter. Give it what you got and do it with love. But here's the most important thing for me is that I wanted to change in life. I had come to a point in my early 20s, mid 20s, where I had hit some walls and I wasn't having a good life. And it was clearly represented by all the things that were going on. So I found out for me that my problem was my thinking, that I had injured mind, that my mind kept thinking from trauma, from pain, from suffering, from agony, from things that were wrong. I couldn't focus on, as Jim has been able to do his life, focus on all the good and see only good. I wasn't there, but I could learn, but I could understand that there was a way there, and that path there is not through the human path, but through the God path, through the path of seeking something greater than yourself to guide. How are my thoughts today, God? Should I be thinking negative about this person, or can you help me to see something positive? And the minute I have that positive thought, I'm restored back to balance. It is a positive universe. It's a universe of positive action. Positive thoughts, positive feelings, and positive action create a positive life.
So thank you. Before we go to Karen, Karen, I just want to bring up two questions and then don't lose your thought, Karen. So we have Deborah on the screen, and she says this. She says, we make our bodies out of light before we incarnated in human form, correct, Jim?
Yes. Well, yeah, before, and, as, and after. You're building the body that you will next inherit right now by your thoughts and actions. So it's a constant. It's a flow, and eventually that body will break on the shore like any wave, and it will manifest itself.
Ah, okay. I like that image. I think that's
so.
Beautiful.
I guess I would have to say. So you've had thoughts about when you were in the primordial ooze, the semen of your father, that you had thoughts about how you were going to make that body.
No.
Okay.
All right.
You're talking about a biological interchange. Can you go back to the image? And I promise I'll make it short. Back to the image again. Okay. The number 1+ that you see at the top and the bottom, that is the pagan barbarian stage, which most of humanity is currently in right now. That frequency is where they dominantly live in all thoughts and actions. The next one in, the 2-2, is the genius awakening. You begin to know there's more about creation than body. You begin to communicate with your creator. The third one in is illumination. That's when you begin to knowingly work with creation to manifest the perfect sphere, which is Christ consciousness. That's what stands before you.
And that's what's happening.
Right. Most of us can't hold 3 and 4, but right now humanity is transferring from 1+ to the 2+, which is the awakening genius. This is a mutation that's taking place right now on this planet. And this is a wondrous thing because it builds momentum that will help us to not fall back into body thinking, which is one. We will start to move forward to thinking as one with Creator. So that's why I chose this one.
So I'm going to hand it to Karen. As Karen is speaking, James, I'm going to ask if the team behind the scenes would please go back to the YouTube channel of the University of Science and Philosophy and pull up the talk that I did in July of 2023, I believe it is. But anyway, it is when I did a presentation about this because it ties into what we're just talking about here. Karen?
I just had one thought, but then somebody had a question. It was Deb, and it was, what is the avoidance principle?
Yes, that's where I was going next.
That's kind of where I was really curious, and because I don't know what that is, so I'm going to say I know somebody else does. But the other question that keeps coming up is our own ignorance at times of our own things. We think we're doing something right, and the repercussions aren't always great. We've all had that, and so I can say for myself. I should speak for myself. And so here's where they talk about this is where learning the science is key. It goes back to learning the science is key, and acquiring new knowledge and wisdom is always almost a prerequisite for your own evolution and growth. So with that, that's what was coming to me was the whole idea. What is, I would assume, Jim, what's the avoidance principle?
Yeah,
the avoidance principle is every action is voided as it happens. Record it as it was voided and repeat it as it was recorded.
Okay, so slow down. So Jim, this has been something I've really struggled with as a Russell student. Please make that very practical for me. So if I walk up to a stranger and I punch them in the face, how does that apply
That's going to be
to?
recorded. That's going to be recorded universally. Now, that stranger that you punched in the face can choose to react to that action and hit you back, or forgive you for that action and move on. So they have the power to not be carried into your thought pattern and your frequency.
Or your drama.
Right.
Can,
Or
can
in
I
martial arts,
add
they
to
will
that?
teach you to defend yourself without becoming angry in the defense until you can remove yourself from that situation. So that's the avoidance principle. If you react, then the reaction, doing the same thing to the other person, hitting or hurting them, simply motivates them to want to hit and hurt you back.
Okay,
So,
okay, I get it.
yeah, and it becomes an endless cycle, and neither
It
party
becomes
wins.
like cosmic ping pong.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what it sounds like. Okay.
and it's mind and body destructive to go to war with
You know, we become the bearers of our own cross. So if I punch somebody in the face, what's going to happen, whether they react or don't react, it's recorded in me. And then it's voided, meaning that action's now been voided, and then it's been mirrored back to me as opposed to at them. And now what I'm going to do is go look in the mirror and say, you know, why are you so screwed up? Which is another way of saying punch myself in the face. So for everything that I do, it's recorded in the space. Every thought, feeling, and action you ever have is not recorded. It's recorded in the space that surrounds your soul. So that would be your idea of creating light bodies, and how do we have these endless repetitive lives where we come back with these patterns. The patterns come from the thought life that we had that are recorded, and the feelings and the actions that we had in our prior lives that are recorded in space, that are recorded in space around our souls. But remember this, what it means, the avoidance principles is voided in me. And that's what Christ said, judge not, for you shall judge yourself. That's not what it says, but that's exactly what I found to come true. In the same manner which you judge others. So if I judge you, that's an action. Now that's reversed, mirrored back to me. The reaction is it comes back to me. It's voided in me, and then recorded in me and repeated back sequentially in irrepetitive cycles until I fix it. Until I void that negative thought with a positive thought, that negative action with a positive action in someone's life or my life. So
You know what? Ken, you know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of the same politics happening between different, I'm going to call it tribes in the world, where it's tit for tat. And I'm going to do this, and then we're going to do that. So we keep playing the same drama because you did that to me, I'm going to do that to you.
That's the cause of all wars. Yes, is always justification. That's called justification.
The biblical equivalent to that is we
trying
cast
to
your bread
get you
upon the
here.
water. You've heard that. Cast your bread upon the water and it will return to you tenfold. That's the biblical scientific statement of exactly the same thing.
Are we going to hand these out?
Does not sound like universal balance.
Well,
Go ahead.
so I'm wearing this to be incredibly obnoxious about this subject, because the whole point of the home study course is we're inching our way to Unit 12, and Unit 12 is my favorite out of the whole home study course. And it talks about that until we understand love is the universal principle, that all of these other things will continue to happen. That until mankind can look through every decision and move towards understanding the action and the reaction and the rhythmic balance interchange, that this is the only thing that will change it. Is that not the point? Am I missing it as a new student?
Well, that and remember, there are steps to a society. So if you are individually attacked, rather than return the attack, you can go to the higher authorities, police, courts, and seek to stop the aggressor from being aggressive. That way, you are not causing anything to happen to them that they did not cause to come to them, which is a reaction to their action. So and then let it go. I am always amazed at these people that have horrific things done upon members of their family that will stand up in court and openly and lovingly forgive the person that harmed someone they loved. It is an amazing achievement of soul evolution, and it leaves most of us stunned because most of us want vengeance.
Here's my practical application of what we're talking about that I've learned from my life is I never understood why I was so hard on myself until I was mirrored back to me that I was so hard on other people. I was so busy to judge. I was so busy to find fault as opposed to find an asset. I was so busy looking at discreditment as opposed to accreditment. And then I didn't realize that life is a mirror, which is the avoidance principle. We're talking about Newton's theory of for every action, there's a reaction. Walter Russell finished that formula. For every action, there's a reaction. And each is equivalent to each other, which voids it, right? For every action's reaction, they void each other. And then they're recorded in the space that surrounds your soul and played back in eternal repetitions of each exchanging with the other. So this is why it's so important. I had never understood why I felt so low about myself, why my self-esteem was so low. My esteem was low was not because of the way I looked at me, but finding out the way I looked at me was the direct way that I looked at you. So I had to learn in life, as Jim is talking about, forgive them for they know not what they do. I have to learn to look at you and realize the same God light in me is the same God light in you. So therefore, if I find fault with you, I'm finding fault with myself. If I discredit you, I then discredit myself. This is the law of avoidance. This is how it's voided in me, not you. You can do whatever you want, right? You reserve an action. Free will gives you the right to take any action you want. But God always reserves the right for reaction. The reaction will always be balanced and come back to that zero stillness, that zero focal.
Okay. All right, so a panel, I'm going to keep us going. On page 615 here, I'm going to go ahead down to the yellow highlighted sentence here, because it talks about how, in that paragraph, all thought bodies extended from your thought body by the desire of your mind to create thought bodies manifest the measure of your knowing. And I love this next sentence. Your thinking can never manifest more than you know, no matter how great is your desire. So this is really important because we live in a world that we think that we've been taught that if we push hard enough, if we work hard enough, we're going to be able to make things happen. And yet we don't realize that it's our thinking that's often the cause of it. So I learned that when I had a previous company called Sassy Tales, and I thought if I worked hard enough, we would really achieve. And I worked very, very hard. But what I didn't recognize is that my unbalanced thinking was the fear of loss, the fear that was behind it. And that thinking was the greater force that overcame every action that I was trying to take. So this understanding the balance between the thinking and the actual action, I thought was incredibly powerful. So as they go through this, I wanted to go down to where it's the green highlighted sentence, and it says this, and ask the group to talk about this divine trinity. I'm going to read two areas. Science should be as simple as God's one working principle is, but science is extremely complex because it is unaware of that one working principle as manifested in the divine trinity. So if you all would type in the chat box, the divine trinity.
What is the divine trinity, I may ask the panel?
Well, that's what I was going to ask as I continue into this next paragraph.
Rhythmic balanced interchange is divine trinity.
Yep.
Okay.
RBI. RBI. Think of baseball. RBI. RBI. Rhythmic balanced interchange. Now that's beautiful, right? So that's what we're talking about all the time. How do I stay in a rhythmic, balanced interchange in life? That's the key formula. In everything you do, look for that formula. Rhythmic, balanced interchange in my thoughts, feelings, and actions. And what Kimberly was just disclosing with great self-honesty about the fear of failure was greater than the belief of success. I'll never forget when big guy Jim Brown came up to me. He said, "Hey, Casey, are you afraid of success?" And I thought about it, and I thought, no, I've been successful in terms of the material world. So I just didn't really think that much about it. My answer was no. And then I thought about it more and more because he never said anything without having deeper meaning. And as I thought about it more, is that has my fear of failure, of not succeeding, been greater than my feeling of succeeding? And I would have had to have said, wow, that's a great one to unravel and a great question to contemplate so that I can start to head towards that feeling of success. And remember, when it's success, any success I'm having in life, I always give credit to God. It's always, I call it a God shot. I call it a God moment. I call it God's success. You thank me, I thank God. I've learned I can't take a compliment. You give me a compliment, my head will get so big it won't fit on this lens. no matter how dimensionless it is, right? So I have to give it to God. So if you say something, you did something good in life, that was a great lecture, that was a great talk, I immediately want to give the credit to God. Now I have unlimited resource. The minute I give every the credit to God, your resources are unlimited.
Okay, Karen, your thought, and then I want to try to land one more thing before we take our next break.
I think
Karen.
that's going to go tie in a few things. When we're talking about two hemispheres, when we think of the Trinity, one is a very creative side, one is the imaginal side, it's the part, and the other part is the very language side, the mechanics and the things that you do. So you have to manage, you have to do, and in the center is a corpus callosum, which is where the pineal gland is, the pineal in there, which is actually our little bridge to the divine that activates both of those. So it is even embedded within you as a science. So it's not even separate from you. It's still two hemispheres, as above, so below, and you still have to bridge and you have to connect, and it always comes from your center.
Well, and that's going to tie into an image that we have a little bit later on in this unit, Karen. So thank you for laying the groundwork for this. So I wanted to just mention a couple of things to everyone, because one of the biggest issues with the home study courses I've run into people is they get intimidated by the science. And the Russells actually address this here at the bottom of page 615. And I'm just going to bring up a couple of points here. And they say that many of you are afraid of science. So I want to just ask you that on a scale of 1 to 10. I'd like to ask the group to please put in the chat box, how intimidated are you by science? With 1 being, I'm not intimidated at all, and 10 being, Kim, I am a science rock star, like 1 step away from an Einstein. Okay, so where are you on that scale? Because I want to have you just pause for a moment and think about maybe you were really good at science when you were a kid. Maybe you weren't very good at science, but as I go through this, if you'll chat that, put that in the chat box. We know that you are, because hundreds of you have told us so. You should not be. You are afraid of it because of the tremendous complexity of the science that you've read in magazines and textbooks. This is a man-made complexity which has no relation to nature. This is why you are afraid of it. So notice the answers in the chat box here. Now, and it goes on to talk about, and I'll go down to the yellow highlighted bubble, and I'm going to read just a couple of things. There is nothing, I'm going to read that paragraph above, James. There's nothing so complex in the whole field of science, whether it's electrodynamics, chemistry, astronomy, or any other branch of science, that anyone of intelligence required to be a good pianist or composer, housewife, or business executive could not easily master. So maybe pause for a moment and really appreciate that this is what Walter and Lara were trying to do for us. And Ken, if you'll read that next paragraph, because it's very, very powerful. You're on mute.
No, that's James. He did that for me. These many varieties of particles which frighten you away from science are all of them the same particle of light corpuscle, but seem to be different because they're in different parts of their wave field. This is going to be fun to break down, and are therefore differently conditioned as to their polarity. And so, would you seem to be different kinds of humans if some cosmic giant photographs you under his microscope one day when you were trudged in knee-deep snow with your fur coat, hat, and mittens on, then later photographed you as a water animal with bathing trunks and sun hat?
So I thought that was a really funny analogy. And this next particular paragraph was quite poetic, and I'm going to have us take our break after the paragraph before we go into the last one. But it says, chemistry is as simple as music. The octave tones, harmonies, and rhythms are the same. We could teach you chemistry from the musical octave or the color spectrum from the Mendeleev tables. And we will say the same for mathematics or mechanics. So after this particular break, we're going to come back and talk about God's cosmic cinema. So stand up, take your 3-minute break and stretch, and come on back with your lens of love. All right, if you'll find your way back. Find your way back. So we have we have 6 more pages to the panel here. We're going to try and finish here as we set the stage. And I wanted to go here to the bottom of page 616 where we just left off. And Jim, if you would read that section that goes from the bottom of page 616 to that top page of 617, please.
Okay. Let me show this real quick. It's on the wall of my house, has been for decades.
Okay.
This is from the Universal One. It shows you the color spectrum and how music and color and frequency all apply to the science. It's in the Universal One, toward the end. My son is.
We don't know what page that is, do we, Jim?
I can find out for you, but it's very near the end. Yeah.
All right, we'll have our background team, try to pull that up. That's fascinating, and love the way we're working to build bridges here. So we're starting with the section as when you are taken behind the scenes.
When you are taken behind the scenes through meditation, where God's cosmic cinema is being played, you will find no complexity there at all. You will find that when you thoroughly know the working principle of the divine Trinity, you so thoroughly that your own consciousness is always the centering zero of knowing from which all pairs of opposite expressions extend, you will suddenly realize that you have all knowledge, for the answer to every question as to cause and principle is within you. That is literally a written text of what an illumination is.
A written text of what, Jim?
Of illumination. When you know your divinity, you know the science of the universe on question.
It's those aha moments. It's those dreams. It's all those things that appear to you in that. Yeah, it's not like you have to know. It's given to you.
It's already yours. Remember?
Yeah, it's already
you asked for it. You already have it in you. Yeah.
I, Kimberly Faith, believe that's part of what we're talking about with the awakening of humanity is actually tapping into the fact that we have all knowledge. So I'd like to challenge everyone to type into the chat box, I have all knowledge.
Kimberly, that goes back to the quote, why the choice of mediocrity versus genius? Because mediocrity is when we just live mundanely picking up the same things that we've always done and listened to. We get to the genius mind when it does not mediocre, when you have those aha moments, when you ask and you receive and the door is open.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there is the choice that we have at any given moment is to ask.
Yeah, and what happens with most of us is we become comfortable in mediocrity. And there's a lot of comfort in mediocrity. Eventually you pay the price for it, but while you're going through it, it can be quite cozy sitting back there in mediocrity. You know,
okay, so pause for just a moment.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but we'll hear that. But I don't agree with that. Mediocrity is boring, right? Genius.
Well,
I think what we're learning here is it's just what we said earlier. You can only know with what you think, and you can only think with what you know. So you got to add new knowledge in. That's what this home study course is all about. Every pass you make, whether it's your third or your 100th, it doesn't matter. And I've made more than I can count through passes through this home study course. Every time there's a new meaning, there's a new
now
learning.
You know that. You know that. But to the person that is unaware, it's not until they become uncomfortable in their mediocrity that they are spurred to move beyond it.
Yeah.
When you're comfortable in your mediocrity, you can just stay there for life.
There are many who are happy in that. They have no interest or desire actually of striving until something will shake them out of their world, and it certainly will happen.
And that's okay. It's okay. As long as they don't, in their mediocrity, try to pull others into it and control it.
Yeah, well, I will agree with that. I will agree with that one. I definitely will agree with that one.
Yeah, for us, somebody like us, Ken, being not learning would be boring. But for other people, actually having to change is a big challenge because a lot of people like to live in a comfort zone. They like it predictable. They go to work the same way. They do the same thing. They do a ritual. And so that for them is comfortable. I've not grown up that way. We move, change. I'm uncomfortable being bored. But that's just because that's also my conditioning.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to go ahead and have us go down to about the middle of page 617, where I have the green highlights there. And it says this, is you will find yourself going to books only for information, or to other men for technical skills, or to encyclopedic recordings. We haven't thought about that word in a while, which are not knowledge, but never for cause or principle, for that knowledge is already within you. Already within you. These lessons should awaken it in your sufficiently for you to recognize your own cosmic unity with the omniscient one. Now I'm going to read this last sentence. The greater your cosmic awareness, greater your cosmic consciousness, which means all knowing. So let's just pause for a moment here for the panel to comment on that, because for me, recognizing your own cosmic unity with the omniscient one, that's a power-packed statement. Let's
Mhm.
not go past that for a moment.
Mhm.
Comment from the panel?
Yeah, I think it has to come back to that relationship we're always talking about how, you see, I found out that I had a relationship with me, but I didn't have a relationship with God. And the me we're talking about is that mediocrity of just sense self, of just satisfying the body. Sex, security, and instinct are the primal instincts that somehow give us some false sense of I'm comfortable in life because I'm secure. And the reality of it is your security is on your body rather than your spiritual depth or your mental acuity. It's more about your physical surroundings. I got a nice house. I got a good job. I'm in an okay marriage. I'm in a dead end marriage. I don't know, but you know what I mean? The mediocrity of just living through the body as opposed to living through the mind and the soul. And remember, there's nothing, this is a hard concept. It's taken me years to just swallow it, which is there's nothing in this world that can ever hurt your soul. Your soul will never be hurt by anything that happens in this three-dimensional world. So, but we get this idea that this is the end and the all, the beginning and the end, and somehow in between. Yet we all talk about there's something beyond this. Well, that something beyond this is called eternity. It's because it's only a mirrored image. Everything is nothing but light corpuscles in motion. They're not real. It's just like turning on and off a flashlight. That flashlight beam isn't real. It's temporary. It's luminosity. So, you know, the only thing that we get to leave this world with, though, is what's in our hearts, if you think about it. So there's a lot of people that say, like, routine breeds security. As long as I do the same thing over and over again, every day, I get up same time, go to the same place, do the same thing. The minute that routine is messed up, watch that person go nuts because they don't have that spiritual center. But with a spiritual center, my friend Jim over there is going through something you could never calculate. Yet walking through it with grace and through this way of life has guided him to walk through a tragedy in life that is a part of life that we're supposed to absorb as all good. And trying to find that good in that tragedy, that's our job. That's real knowledge. That's when you're really hunting for the source. But to just accept tragedy as, oh, that's the way it is, I must take it this way. That's not what life's about. There's nothing in this world that's going to hurt your soul. Remember that once you learn what your soul is, of course.
Well, and to be honest with you, this actually ties into what I had studied years ago, was the Course of Miracles. I know that many of you have tap danced on that, but one of the phrases that I loved from that was, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. And so nothing real can be threatened is exactly what you're saying, Ken, is the fact that our soul cannot be hurt. And so when you look at a lot of these spiritual texts, they are saying there are different ways of saying some of the same thing. So when we talk about the basis of life's problems here, I want to go ahead down to the bottom of page 617. And it says, if you face a crashing defeat, you must know how to meet it. The best way to do this is to search within your consciousness to find how or where you have violated the law of balance in the principle of the divine Trinity. Okay, so that's a pretty powerful statement. I want to go on down to that next highlighted circle there. And it talks about seek the solution within yourself. The answer is within yourself. Seek aloneness with your own soul, capital S, and talk to God about it. Jim, can you read that next sentence, please? 2 sentences.
The more you know about his law of balance, the better you can comprehend God's universal language of light in which God talks to you. Likewise, the more you dynamically know that principle as manifested in everything you do, the less problems you will have to overcome. There it
So,
is.
so I want to invite everybody to put in the chat box the language of light, because that is speaking of light as a language. And I remember years ago having this understanding and this awakening of saying light was information and darkness was lack of information. And when society, when humanity gets caught up in all these sides, to me, it really is this understanding of light is a language. It's information. It's tapping into that knowledge, that universal source. That was my understanding. And there, Karen, I was going to ask if you wouldn't mind just reading the section where I wrote the little iconic body there. It says, God has given you something
to guide your life actions, which you probably never had been given thought to. He has given you what is known as an equator. When applied to Earth or Sun, as applied to you, it is a plane which divides your body into two halves and opposite halves. Each opposite half's symmetry balances the other half, but is reversed.
So let's look at that next page. Go ahead and pull the next page, because this is the image that's on the next page. And so, James, we might need to shrink this up so everybody can see this. So, Jim, if you would explain what's happening here.
Well, it's your masculine and feminine natures. One side of your body is more dominant in the masculine, and the opposite in the feminine. I love the you always hear me going back to biblical things, because I've read the Bible. I like a lot of the wisdom in it. If you remember, there's a story where the fishermen are out with Christ and they're casting their water to the left side, the masculine intellectual side, where they know that they have, through habit, been able to get large amounts of fish there, but not this day. They're not getting fish. They've overfished the area. What Christ tells them to do is go into the intuitive side, cast your net to the right, whereby desiring and imagining the abundance that you can do with your intuitive side fills their nets with fish. So it's a balancing of these two natures. Reason and feeling, when they're balanced and they work knowingly with each other, is divinity manifested. And that's the line you see down the middle.
All right. Can you scroll down to that next image, James, there? Because I think this is important for us to pull up here. Right there beside it, it says this is they represent the undivided, the unchanging spiritual light from which the physical bodies of all things are extended. And so it's saying that there's this equator within our bodies that Karen is even referring to earlier. There's an equator there within the earth. And Ken, if you would, at the bottom of that page in the blue highlighted section, it talks about this issue of gravity. Can you bring that up?
Yeah. Gravity is the desire force in mind, which is located in the pineal gland of man as the seat of consciousness. The light of your consciousness is in that portion of the equator of you, which centers the true right thought extensions of your brain through which it operates to control your body.
So explain, what does that mean?
Well, it goes on to help me to understand that the things that I bring into my life, I'm gravitating them. So whatever I think about is the desire force, right? Desire force becomes energy. Energy is emotion. We call that inspiration. We can call that desperation. Whatever energy you give to those thought bodies that you're harnessing is what you're going to bring into your life. So desire force, if you want something different, then you must desire to do something different and come from a different place. I can't come from a different place unless I desire different information, different knowledge in my head that I can process that different place from. So in other words, I'm going to go to the hardwired recordings that have always been there in my life. If I don't put something new in, if I don't come from a new place, then I have no choice but to come from a place which I've always come from, which is selfish, self-centered, little self, me, what you call the difference between little self and big self. So in terms of that, taking ownership, and it's like when something bad happens, like I've gone through some physical stuff, and I don't necessarily look at it as bad anymore. I look at it as just a physical transition of my body, but it weighed me down, and it certainly brought some stuff into my life that I wasn't thinking was going to happen again. So it just goes to show you, but as I'm coming out of it now, which has taken a bit of time, I feel as though I'm heading to the next level. So it's not about staying stagnant in any one place either. We always must keep growing. We always must desire to know more, desire to grow more. If you stop desiring to have a better life, your life will flatten out. But if you keep desiring to have a better life, I guarantee you, you will have a better life.
Well, I
Desire
wanted to bring up something. Karen, go ahead, and then I want to like bring up something.
Picture in my head when Ken was talking, it was like two gears working together. They're one is there. That's what it is. It's two gears, and it's pulling in from the energy from the ether, which is God's energy. But they're gears. Once you put this in motion, that one's going in motion. If this your head's thinking in that direction, the gears are going that way. So it was just a visual that came to me.
Yeah.
Well, so I wanted to share a vision that I actually had in 2015. And so I literally, when I was actually went out on the deck, it was one of those 3 a.m. in the morning things. And I was shown the yin yang symbol. And so if you'll notice, the yang, the masculine here is the white and the yin was the black. And I watched it morph literally in front of me. And I watched this morph, and I want to ask you, what do you think you see on the screen when you see this?
more yang than yin.
I see
Well,
Pac-Man.
what does it say, Karen?
I said Pac-Man.
That's exactly what I did. It's exactly what I saw. So the reason I bring this up is because what I was shown, and this was 2015, is that we were out of balance in the world, that the masculine and the feminine energy was out of balance. And so when you think about this equator, and that what I realized at that moment, and part of why I even worked to publish the book Your Lion Inside, was because I knew there was no way that the masculine energy was going to shrink, that the only way to be able to put that back into the world, it's not male female, so give me a moment, the only way was to be able to have that feminine energy rise to put us back into balance. But when we think about this with all of us, and but Jim said about that logical side and that heart side, what we are in a balancing phase in the world is to making that heart side, that emotional side, that understanding of this lens of love. Are we making decisions through this heart knowledge? And so to me, that was what I spent the next few years of my life, is doing whatever I could in my world to say, wow, how do you bring that balance? You can download that book for free, by the way, at my website, yourlioninside.com. But it was a very profound vision for me that really drove my next few years. So I want to ask the group over here on page 620. We're down to our last two pages in this as we inch here towards the end. And it says,
hold on, love. I just want to make one plug for your book, and it's not because I love you to the ends of the world, but that is true. But if you are of the female persuasion, I cannot tell you how informative that book as a man was, to hear a female's perspective of 5 different females, their characteristics, the things that they're fighting against in this world. It was so informative. So I encourage you, if you're a woman, it's very empowering. And if you're a man, it's very knowledgeable to find out why women operate the way they operate. And if you are of the male species, I encourage you to read that book too. It is quite a book to learn about 5 different characteristics of 5 different women and how they parallel a lot of the females that you'll see in the world that you live in. So it's a really
actually
great
based on the 7 sisters, and thank you so much, love. I appreciate that. The 7 sisters, and I have a lot of fathers that actually
7.
a lot of fathers in the corporate world that will end up sharing this book. You can actually download the book for free, and you are welcome to gift it to whoever you'd like to in the world. It was recently translated into Korean, which makes me very, very excited about it impacting that side of the world. So thank you for that. But that was the motivation.
Move on, I'm sorry, Kim. Before you move on, you had asked me to. This is on page 249, Universal.
249.
Yep.
Okay, and why don't you just comment on that before I take us to 620? You know, every once in a while, trying to wrangle this panel is like trying to herd cats.
He already did.
It's the 0 through 9 principle again. He simply added the color frequency.
Right.
So you may want to take a screenshot of this and inspire you and see what, remember, always going back to meditation in unit 1 to see what your creator has to say to you. Now, over here on the top of page 620, as we're moving through here, it says, the real immortal you, the invisible you, controls the visible body of you from the equator of your body. Everything you are in thought extends 2 ways from your consciousness, which is located upon your equator. Your senses vibrate from that equator when your equator is out of balance with the universal equilibrium and cease to vibrate when it is in balance with it. So I found that interesting. It ceases to vibrate when it is in balance. So what is that about, Jim?
Well, in your nerve structure, when you're in balance and free of pain and discomfort, you simply go through your day with no distractions. When something, always use the proverbial hit your thumb with a hammer. Now while that action reaction is going on, you can be very distracted. And many times a thought or an action or what someone outside of you, a group or an individual does, can be like that proverbial hit on the thumb with a hammer. It's very hard to turn your attention away from being attacked. But that's exactly what you need to do. Turn your attention away from it.
It's like
Let
no.
go of it. Yes. Yes.
Like
Because if you don't, you become that frequency. And if you become that frequency, you're pulled off center and you lose touch with your divinity.
So
Another great description was last week talked about the coat, right? If you're in a room and you're cold, your body starts to vibrate. I'm cold, put a coat on me. The minute you put a coat on you and you're restored to normalcy, which would be the zero vacuum of space, is normalcy, to be in a balanced state. It's normal to feel good. It's normal to be healthy. It's abnormal to feel bad. It's abnormal to be unhealthy. So when you are in a normal state, your body doesn't vibrate. When it's comfortable in its natural state, it ceases to vibrate. And then all that's left is that equatorial plane of all knowledge and all presence and all power that it resides in each and every one of us.
Well, this is important for us to remember about what we're going through in humanity right now, because we know that the world is out of balance. And so the world is out of balance, and we are in the midst of lots of chaos and lots of change. And it's going to be the power that we have, each of us individually, during these changes, is to be able to go back to that center point, that balance, so that we are helping to balance the world that is out of balance at the moment. Does that make sense? So
my world is out of balance right now. My equal and opposite reflection in life, my partner, my friend, my love, is no longer physically with me. I'm experiencing two things: profound love for the time I had with her, and grief. Grief has been the difficult one. But if you think about it, grief is a measure of the love that you had for that person.
So let's show Jim speaking here. This is really important, Jim, because I know that many of ours have dealt with this. So let's focus on you, James. Say that again.
Grief is the measure of the love that you had for that missing person in your life. So my grief is deep, but I don't look at it as an enemy. My grief is deep because I love the presence of that person with me, and I no longer have it. The physical presence, the emotional and mental presence is still there and as strong as ever, and possibly stronger, because she knows and has realms that she deals with right now beyond my frequencies. So I can receive tremendous help and insight through that love. And that's what I'm attaching to.
Very powerful. Very powerful, Jim. And you are certainly inspiring us with how you are managing this path with such grace. So thank you.
Did you catch the lack of negativity in there? I don't hate grief, and I don't feel like love has been taken from me. I realize that they're two extensions of the same emotion, the same desire to love and be with someone. So what am I going to do with my love? I pour it into my family, my children, my friends. And that's where it is right now. And so I really feel, when we sit and talk about these metaphorical things, I really am amazed that I don't want people to think that if you're in a bad situation in life, if there's something that's coming into your life that's causing you great difficulty and you cannot remove yourself from it, God bless you. You know, sometimes our karmic return is not individual. Sometimes it's family, community, national, and world. World wars are karmic return, not to the individual, but we can all get caught up in it. So to those people that are locked in bad situations that they just cannot seem to pull themselves out of, the only road to salvation is being willing to love and forgive until it hurts. And it does. And I wish I could change that for some people, but sometimes you can't, you know. And And
Well,
let me tell you,
do know, I think it's important to know too that if you are in a bad situation, there is a way out, but you have to take the right actions. You see,
well, yeah,
understand is the key to right principle, which is what this home study is all about right principle. But if you don't understand it, then it doesn't mean anything. If you don't have your home study course and you're not reading it during the week, then what does this Sunday podcast really mean to you? Other than for an hour and a half, I get to hear these people talk. It sounds cool. But if I don't go live it, then it doesn't mean it. They're just words and they will
well,
fade
yeah,
away by tomorrow. You'll forget what's been said.
I'm talking
If
about
you read
situations that you cannot remove yourself from.
right.
And many people go through life in these situations. A simple example will be someone that's falsely accused of a crime and they're in prison. Now they cannot remove themselves from that until some outside force proves their innocence. So that's the parable when Christ is in the garden and he says, "Can I not remove this cup? Must I go through what is being predicted?" It wasn't his karma, but it was the belief system of the people in the community that he was in that he had to go through that. And his answer was that I will make it sweeten in the drink. So throughout that ordeal he could not escape from, he simply loved, loved, loved. And that was the example to humanity.
That was a been a tough one for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, where does all men and women find God?
Where's what?
Where do all men and women find God?
Well, it's within themselves, but it's also understanding that because those around you who are doing unbalanced and harmful things are doing that, doesn't mean that divine isn't present in them. So if you can't deal with what they're doing to you or to those around you, then seek to awaken that divine. See that in your mind. Love them and seek to awaken their divine. Because the slightest shift in their action can make things drastically different.
That had nothing to do with my question. Hold on one second.
Then I misunderstood your question.
The question is where, as Walter Russell and Leah Russell have laid out, we all find God in isolation, guys. You must find God within. That's where God must be found.
Yeah.
It's not without. It's
You
not
can
in
find
somebody else. It's not something somebody else says.
I thought that's what I was saying when I said look for the divine within the person or situation that you're in.
My point in being is you used it for instance of a guy getting falsely accused, but most 98% of most people that go to jail find God the minute they go into jail. Why? Because they're in isolation. So there's always, even in the worst of situations, can good be found.
Yes.
All right. So I'm jumping in, team. Kimberly's jumping in here. Okay. So please. So I have two things. Deborah has a great comment. So Karen, if you would help us read that. She says this: seeing
a situation as bad as uncomfortable makes it harder. Sometimes we just need to lean into that which we believe and we cannot bear in order to find our way out.
So much truth in that. So much truth in that, Deborah. It's certainly a lesson that I've been learning this week. And I wanted to end up here because we are past our time, but there are some really important things that I think in light of everything that's happening in humanity, that's important that we anchor this here. And I want to go to the bottom of page 620 here. And it says, above all things, however, you must gradually know about death. It has been said that death is the last thing for man to conquer or overcome. What is meant by that is the knowledge of the fact that what man calls death is what Jesus called the kingdom of heaven, or omnipresent mind, which is the eternal you and cannot die. Now, drink this in for those of you that sometimes struggle when you're seeing what's happening in the world or you're personally experiencing this. Life and death are equal opposites. They are sexed mates, as all pairs of opposites are sexed mates. They interchange from the moment of birth. And that interchange is to seek balance with each other, which is the sole purpose of all sex interchange between pairs of opposites. When life and death find balance, they lose it. As all pairs of opposites perpetually lose the balance, they perpetually seek the moment they find it. Now, listen to how poetic this next section is. Life and death are born in the same cradle. But the cradle is a cycle like the swinging of a pendulum, with an equator between the two from which life extends one way and death the other way. Each inward breath you take is a rebirth toward life. Each outward breath is a rebirth towards death. As life and death continually interchange, They approach each other until they meet at the halfway point, the equator of your life cycle.
Midlife, another way of saying midlife.
There is no death in God's universe. There is naught but perpetual rebirth into the endless repetition of rebirths. Every opposite gives birth to its own opposite simultaneously and becomes its opposite sequentially. So, as we wrap up here, this was one of the things that, as many of us I know, will feel the suffering of others. And what I was taught during meditation with my Creator was that whenever we see what looks like as a death, as an ending, that there's always a rebirth, a beautiful new beginning. And so that I could choose to focus on one way or the other. And that he actually, I was reminded of the story about Lot. That's that famous story in the Bible about saying when the city was burning, the wife's not supposed to look back or she turns into a pillar of salt. What was revealed to me in my meditation was that it wasn't the being punished, it was the fact of what we focus on grows. And so as we go through changes in the world and what humanity is going through an awakening right now, when we see what we as a human perceive as bad, okay, that we talked about, may we know that there is a rebirth that's happening at the same time. And to me, that was one of the great comforts out of this particular lesson. So it is time. We are at the end, and it is time for us to at least show the video. So Karen actually pulled the video. We pulled the video from last week that we were supposed to show last week. So this is from lesson 30. May it simply be pulled in. If you have questions, please put them in the chat box, but sit back and enjoy the visual journey gift that Karen has given us once again. What a beautiful gift once again, Karen. Our gracious thank you for your gift of love to us all. There, you're on mute. Very, very, very powerful.
So I said,
Very powerful.
remember how big that chapter was?
It was.
Yeah.
It was a bit. It's a massive chapter, and so that's part of the power and the beauty of what the Russells gifted all of us is that they built this home study course in a way that we could begin to. It begins to make more and more sense with each passing month. So a gracious thank you. So just a few final thoughts as we wrap up here. We are going into Unit 9 starting in February. So if you'll take a look at what's on the screen here, there we are every Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be going through Unit 9, as you'll see on slide 11 here, James. And I would like to show you the schedule. And then we also gave you a snapshot according to the syllabus, the outline that the Russells came through. The next slide we're going to show you. Go ahead and take a screenshot and see what your soul and your heart has to say about what we're going to be covering in Unit 9. I want to say thank you to everyone that's joining us. It is a true joy being with you every Sunday night. I want to say thank you to the folks who gave the donations towards the project last week. There were a few of you, and thank you so much for supporting the project. The most important way to support this whole initiative, by the way, is to actually get yourself a copy of the home study course. It is precious, precious indeed. Perhaps you want to gift it to someone else, or if you are concerned about having a copy for yourself and you're not able to, then please reach out to philosophy.org, and they do have a location on the website about where you can actually get a scholarship to do so. So a gracious thank you to you all. May you continue to just strive and move forward and say a gracious thank you and celebrate yourself for the fact that we're here. We're here into Unit 9. I mean, to the team, may we say that's pretty exciting. May we celebrate that. We are only 4 units from the end, and what a delightful time this will be. And we encourage everyone to walk through the world with the proverbial lens of love, and that's exactly what I'll be doing in New York City. We want to say thank you to everyone and send you much love. Won't say goodbye. We'll say see you next Sunday.